Hi, Mike. How you doing, buddy?
Good morning, Mike, and welcome to the show. Got a lot on this morning. Got a lot on. Welcome
Yes.
to Talking Niagara, everybody. It's May 2nd. Uh, this is your news talk show for Niagara Falls today. And we got quite a few stories here. So,
Yeah, we
everybody
just plot along, get which ones we need. Yeah.
Yep. Everybody knows about the family doctor shortage that we have in Ontario. Niagara hospitals are aiming for every newborn to go home with a family doctor. And ironically here, if kids come into hospital anybody under 18 who comes into hospital and they don't have a family doctor, they should be leaving with a family doctor, or at least information about where they can get a family doctor.
Yeah, there's this 20% of the title of the article, of course, is 20% of Niagara kids without a doctor. Niagara Health Program aims to address that. Now, it doesn't say, I wonder, partly because of the influx of refugees into the asylum seekers into Niagara.
It
We've got,
wouldn't say.
we've
It
got
wouldn't say.
5,000. So there's going to be a lot more children.
Yeah,
So we already, even before the asylum seekers came to town, we had problems with family doctors and all that.
yeah,
Well, I imagine that must exacerbate it a little bit. I
yeah,
know the schools when we supply when Kiwanis and Staples do their thing and collect money and buy school supplies for the local schools. It is a miscounting of the amount of students that the school will have. Uh, it's always the kids that the asylum seeker kids that are what they're trying to accommodate because the Ontario government doesn't view them as permanent residents yet, so they don't get allotments of money for them.
yeah.
So uh, I'm wondering if the same sort of similar thing is happening in the hospital.
It could be, but we've had a family doctor crisis. We've had a family doctor crisis for at least 10 years. It's something we've talked about 3 or 4 years ago. One of the things we talked about early when we created Talking Niagara was the lack of family doctors in the area.
Yeah, that was already a crisis before
Yeah,
we have asylum seekers. So I'm just thinking, yeah, that probably just exacerbated it. Now the fact that
yeah,
we our health system is broken. I was
yeah,
talking to my mother's new doctor just a couple of months ago, and we were trying to describe the things that had happened. My mother, they messed up on my mother's hip when they operated on it. She had to have an emergency operation a month later.
yeah,
She, she got forgotten in the hospital. All this time, I
yeah,
thought she was being taken care of. Every time I went there, they'd forgotten about her. My niece almost
yeah.
almost was in very bad trouble because of an ordinary appendicitis thing. They they kept they didn't pay attention to her at all, and she had to have an emergency operation. They missed my broken hip for crying out loud. I had a broken hip for 2 months, and then there are horror stories like this all over the place, much worse than this
Well,
one.
and yeah, and in fact, I remember spending 7 or 8 hours in the hospital, um, you know, to get a treatment. Yeah, not nice for an eye injury. Right, not
Yeah,
very good.
so it is a broken system.
Yeah,
Now, people will say, well, that's why in the States it's better because you pay for it. Well, no, that's not the case either. When I was down there on a course that I was taking, I was talking to American guys. A guy had to pay $800. This was back in 2000,
that's a broken system as well.
yeah, he had to pay $800 to have a nurse look at a scratch around his daughter's eye, and he had to wait hours for that to happen.
Yeah,
And he got a bill of $800.
yeah,
What happened is his little daughter fell, and it was around her eye. So, in new parent type of
yeah. New parent, yeah, new
well,
parent desperation.
Yeah, goes to the hospital, and he's worried that it might have something to do with his eye. So he had to wait and wait and wait and wait. And finally, a nurse came down, cleaned it up, had a look at it, and said, "There's nothing wrong. She's fine. Don't worry." Sent her home. And then he got an $800 bill.
Yep. Oh yeah. 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 Interesting. And hey, I've said this before, and I'll say it again. There's we're in a situation where we've got 2.5 million people in Ontario that do not have a family doctor, but yet we've got doctors driving around, operating as cab drivers in Toronto. We need to get those doctors being doctors. We need.
Well, we have a definite problem. They're going to have to, like, I talked to a surgeon, an Iranian guy. He was an assistant of Dr. Huck. Dr. Huck did the operations on my hands when I had carpal tunnel, and I had quite a good long talk with Dr. Huck. He's from Nova Scotia, born and raised. I forget the origin of his where his family was originally from, somewhere in Africa. But that's a big continent, so it's But in any case, he was a Muslim, and we were able to talk about certain things that I was able to ask him questions, because I saw that he had pictures of himself going to the Hajj and that. But he has an Iranian doctor as an assistant and a surgeon, and he can't learn English. He's as hard as he tries, he can't learn it, and so you have this guy who is a qualified doctor, a surgeon.
English,
he can't practice.
It's a big problem in Canada. It's a big problem in Canada. We have doctors and other professionals out there doing, doing jobs. As I say, cab driver. You get where I'm coming from here. Doing simple menial jobs that they're well overqualified for. We need to get them moving into being doctors.
Well, the problem is, if they can speak English or French, and they can actually pass the test, so we know if they really are qualified. Some of the doctors that I've run across in our hospitals, I wonder how well they're qualified at all.
Yeah, there needs to be an upgrade program.
A lot of them I know are very well qualified, because I can see their diplomas and I can feel a great deal of confidence in them just by talking to them. But others, I'm wondering how well qualified.
Oh, yeah. But again, just because a person qualified in Tehran doesn't mean they're no good as a doctor.
No, but they still have to be vetted.
But they have to bring up, there has to be an upgrade program to our way of dealing with it.
Yeah, they have to be vetted, and of course we do need them. And if they are qualified to be a doctor, let's get them out there.
Yeah,
and
get them a program, and let's get them a program to speak to help them speak English.
Well, my mom's doctor is foreign born. Her name is Dr. Malik. She's a Muslim because she wears the hijab.
Yeah,
and I think she's probably Pakistani, but I'm not so sure. And anyway, she's obvious, and she's got an accent, so she wasn't born here.
Yeah.
So obviously she got her qualifications overseas, and she's fine. There's nothing wrong with her. But the fact is, I can communicate with her in English, and obviously she's done the test to make sure it's okay. So she'd have no problem at all. She probably had no problem at all going right into the becoming a doctor here, obviously. And
well, she's got the fortune that she probably comes from an English-speaking land, or partially English-speaking land.
Well, she does have an accent, so obviously English wasn't the first language.
Yeah, that's fine.
But the fact of the matter is, I got no problem. I've had all kinds of offshore doctors from India, from Pakistan, I think one was from Africa. I've had all kinds of them. I have no problem at all if their qualifications are good. I mean, when I had a broken wrist, my surgeon was an Egyptian. When I had, you know what I mean? It just goes on, and I got no problem at all. Obviously, I all they care about is they have the qualifications.
Yeah.
And,
my eye surgeon was from Costa Rica.
yeah. So but they do need to be able to, you have to be able to determine if they're qualified, and that's the thing. And if they can't speak English or French, how do you figure that out?
Well, the interesting thing is about it is that was back when when England were playing Costa Rica in the World Cup, and or had lost to Costa Rica in the World Cup in the group stages, and it was one of the worst English performances in the World Cup ever. Right. And we had lots to talk about in that regard.
Well, he was your eye guy?
And he was my eye doctor, yes.
Well, he may have suggested maybe you don't want these eyes fixed until after the tournament. You're not going to like what you see.
Well, I already didn't like what I see because England were knocked out in the first phase, which would, like never. They got 1 point.
Well, anyway.
Yeah, but anyway.
Speaking of which, the Buffalo Bandits are doing well again this year. They were the National Lacrosse League's champions. I think it's the only championship team that Buffalo has had of professional sports. I think they've come close with hockey and they've come close with football, but lacrosse they actually did it, and they might do it again this year. So I'll just bring that up for any lacrosse lovers out there.
Okay. One doctor in the emergency ward is just stupid. Yep. We think we can all agree upon that. You can build the best facilities with up-to-date equipment, but what good is that if there's only one doctor there? Absolutely. Yeah. There needs to be at least 2 on any emergency shift.
Yeah.
Even if one calls in sick.
Yeah.
And there'll be another one you can put up. All right. Yeah.
I still remember, then keeping them awake all night long is like I remember his name was Dr. Lee. You'd always see him like he was a hospital guy, a doctor, and he looks like he always got stuck with the night shift. The guy, he was the one that sewed me up. I had some pretty big gouges in me after my car accident, and he's the guy that sewed me up, and crabby, miserable. Oh my God. Talk about the antithesis of a bedside manner. I said, "Oh man, you're stabbing me with that needle. You should, yeah. I give you enough numbing. That's enough. You don't need no more." What?
Well, you shouldn't have got yourself in a car accident, Dave.
Oh God, I had been in a car accident. It was a lot of pain. I'm lying there. They took forever to come to fix me up, sew me up, and then when he did, he put a couple of shots of, I don't know, freezing in and around the area. But it was a big gouge. I had 2 big gouges. Like it was separated. He had to put a couple layer of stitches in there to close it up. And he was impatient and miserable because I knew that I had brushes with him before.
Yeah.
He was just, but I mean, he did his job. He was there. He was good at
what. No, it's a good thing that they're trying to match kids with doctors. That's a good thing. It's a good step in the right direction, and it may help get us more family doctors assigned to people who don't have them.
Yes. So quite right. We'll get back to topic here. Yeah. So our goal is to ensure that every pediatric patient, regardless of their situation, has access to continuous community-based care after they are discharged.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we have a doctor shortage.
And we do, but it's one way. It's one way of making sure we deal with that. They'll know that. See, the good thing is that the hospital will know those that have got waiting lists, that have got lists, right? Vacancies on their lists, and that's what they need to do is match up to the vacancies, right? They're in a much better position than we are to ever know.
Well, they're also it looks like it's a family physician or nurse practitioner.
Yeah, well, nurse practitioner is a step in the right direction as well.
Yeah, as long as they're getting covered.
Yeah. All right. The next question is, and we talked about this a few weeks ago, Niagara-on-the-Lake accepting the strong mayor's power. Councillor Sandra O'Connor put this motion up to Tuesday's council meeting, and it was voted down 5-4. So now Niagara-on-the-Lake has accepted strong mayor's powers.
Yeah, so they have felt that, but it was only a 5-4 vote, wasn't it?
Yeah, 5-4 vote. Yeah.
So obviously, not everybody thinks it's a good idea.
Yeah.
But she feels that there's enough checks and balances in it to protect against anti-democratic leaning. I'm not so sure, but what it does is it speeds up the process, and that's what it was designed to do, to kind of speed things up and to get past the sort of NIMBY thing that happens in cities. Not in my backyard. We need houses and everything, but we don't want them here, and we don't want them to look like that, and we don't want the ones for poor people, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
It's basically, let's get this thing going, and there's going to be a lot of resistance sometimes in the city. And what we want to do is speed that up. So we give strong mayor powers, but they're, according to this article, they when they voted it in, they felt that there was still enough checks and balances on the mayor so that the mayor cannot be king. So that the councillors do have processes by which to resist the strong mayor powers.
Yeah, and I agree with you, Mike. It's designed to bypass common sense and the job of councillors. And sometimes that common sense, we need somebody to stand up and say, "Not here, mate."
Yeah, sometimes, but you can understand this when it came things like wind turbines and all that. Just that, to sort of give a different example, when wind turbines and solar farms are going up in sort of higher end neighborhoods or townships, they didn't want anything to do with it because it made noise and it looked bad. So although they wanted it when they voted for it, because they want a greener economy, they sure as hell didn't want it in their neighborhood, right? Because because they had money and they didn't like to look at it.
Yeah.
So a strong mayor's power may be able to get over something like that. No way, just we're going to put it up, and that I can cut through a lot of red tape and get it done. So that, I think that's basically, but Ford came up with it because of
strong mayor's powers hasn't been used that much anyway, and where they have been used is where there's been some Cisco is the one who's used it most in Niagara.
Now here's he said that there are benefits to the strong mayor system, including how the municipal budget is prepared. He said that the mayor introduces the budget and the council has 30 days to discuss it and is able to make amendments. Ontario announced we do know that. Ontario announced strong mayor powers should expand to 169 additional communities, including Niagara-on-the-Lake, in early April, and all the municipalities except Waynfleet.
Well, the interesting thing about that is that I do agree with the mayor essentially owning the budget, and I do agree that about the need for some timelines on doing the budget, because we've had some municipalities whereby they've been dilly-dallying on getting the budget approved, our own included.
Yeah, so just a refresher, the powers and duties of the mayor include appointing or firing municipal chief administrative officer, hiring certain municipal department heads, proposing the municipal budget and creating or eliminating committees of council. I'm not so comfortable with that though. I can see creating, but eliminating,
Eliminating everything
if
is
he
not.
doesn't like what the committee is saying.
Yeah.
Also hiring and firing municipal departments. There's a lot of openings there for nepotism and for favoritism, that kind of thing. So if you want to, be buddy with the mayor, maybe you're going to be the CEO kind of thing. So there are things here where I can see it's easily handled in a small council like ours, but I would wonder in a much bigger council how that would fare out. Let's say in Toronto or something like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Where you start schmoozing with the mayor, and you might get a lot more beneficial sort of things happening your way, just because you know the guy and you know that he can rubber stamp something pretty quick for you. So I think there's real issues with the strong mayor power. I think it has to be used for a while before people find the flaws in it.
Yeah. Yeah, I think we haven't yet found the flaws. As I said, Matt Cisco has used it 22 times. And now our mayor has used it 8, and on minor things, right?
Yeah, they're minor things, and it's just, well, you can understand why they have why the things are sped up.
Yeah.
And how useful that is. But on the other hand, you always have to wonder, does the council have enough power to rein them in if they do need? And apparently, most of the councilors think so. But on a 5-4 vote, that doesn't give you a whole lot of reassurance that the council is too happy with it.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, moving on. US is urging India and Pakistan to defuse tensions after there's been a rash of new Kashmiri killings in the Indian province of Kashmir.
Well, this actually, we are on the cusp of war, and this could be a very dangerous war. Anyone that knows the region, that Kashmir has been fought over between Pakistan and India for a long time. It's a very vital area too, because the Indus River runs through there as well. The problem here is, in this particular case, on April 22nd, a group called Lashkar-e-Taiba, or some people call it the Resistance Front, I guess, went into a resort town in Kashmir, normally a very safe part of Kashmir, got into the resort town, collected right in a field on a lawn. They collected a bunch of the tourists that were there, determined whether they were Muslim or Hindu, and shot dead all the Hindus, point blank, cold blooded. 22 of them. One of them was a Christian, and one was a Muslim that tried to interfere and stop it. So they killed him too.
Yeah.
So this was an outrage. It's a cold-blooded murder.
And the name of the
is paid attention to here, and that with all the hubbub going around with with all the other news of tariffs and all that other stuff, this is a situation that could explode into a major war.
Yeah. And the resort town involved is Pahalgam.
Yeah.
And Islamabad has rejected these allegations, but the U.S. Secretary of State Mark Rubio has actually held separate talks with both the Indian Foreign Minister and the Pakistani Foreign Minister this past Wednesday about maintaining peace and security in the area.
This could touch off World War III, because both of India and Pakistan are nuclear powers. They have a long history of hate between one another. They've been fighting for a very long time, had many wars between one and the other.
Yeah.
This is an outrage like no other. When you cold-bloodedly kill 22 tourists, that were there, and you killed only the Hindu ones or the ones that weren't Muslim. It's remarkable how they checked. They went to person and asked them to recite uh, uh, something from the Quran. Uh, and even if they did, they made them pull down their pants and check to see if they were circumcised or not, because of course, like that's a practice among Jews and Muslims is circumcision. So the ones that weren't Muslim, they killed cold blooded right then and there, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And they got a film of it, really, too, where you see this going on. So this is a cold-blooded outrage. Now, the Indian government feels that the Pakistani government has been supporting terrorist groups in the area for a very long time, doing their sort of proxy work. Now, we do know that the Pakistani military is not exactly factional and that generals can go along their own way. We saw this with Osama bin Laden, who lived without detection in Pakistan for over 10 years. And the suspicion was, of course, that the Pakistani army knew exactly where he was, but wouldn't.
Well, there's a line of fire across the Pakistan India border, and I say line of fire because it's lit up, and you can see it from 30,000 foot. This where the entire border goes, right? Between India and Pakistan, it's been lit up. It's been lit up for years, and the energy bill on that alone must be astronomical because basically both nations are firing bright lights at one another, much as they have done in other border skirmishes in other parts of the world, like Russia and China when they hated each other at one point, and some of the things the Nazis did in the Second World War.
Well, this is a flare point, and those in geopolitics knows things. Always come back to India and Pakistan as a possible flare point for a much wider war.
As you say, they are both nuclear nations. Not that they would necessarily use the bomb in these circumstances.
Well, the problem is if they use the bomb, the other side's going to use the bomb. So
it
sort of cancels each other out.
It's mutually assured destruction, yes.
But many people who are familiar with the situation feel that if there's going to be a nuclear start, that might be the place where the first actual nuclear war starts, where tactical nuclear weapons are used. Now we have a situation here where the Pakistan army is very modern and well equipped with modern stuff. The Indian army, Indian military has a lot of old equipment, but tons of it, and they have also modernized to a point, or are on the process of modernizing. So you have two vast armies that could go at it. I don't know. I can't see Indira Modi he's being asked to back down by Rubio. But what do you do when you have a population that just saw Hindus murdered just because they were Hindus?
Yeah.
In full blood.
Yeah. And as a result of this, 786 Pakistani citizens have left India and 1,465 Indian citizens have left Pakistan.
Well, yeah, India canceled the visas of Pakistanis, wants them out. They also restricted the airspace of Pakistan Airlines over India. Yeah. This could, because it's so far away and we don't hear it. This is a major thing, a very major thing, and I'm so surprised it's not more on in the headlines, because this is a wick that could really blow up. And at the very least, there's going to be some kind of conflict across the border, and hopefully they hold their fire. But this could get bad, and it could turn out to be a real military action. Modi has been itching to hammer the Pakistani terrorists up, Pakistani affiliated terrorists in Kashmir for a long time, and unfortunately, all I see is a lot of innocent people getting killed here.
Yeah.
But you know what? This terrorist attack reminds me of what Al Shabaab did in Kenya when they walked into a mall. Remember when they went into a
Oh,
mall
yeah. No,
and they
that's yeah, and they just wiped out loads of people. They just started indiscriminate shooting in the mall. Yeah.
yeah, and the faces on these guys were like just like they were out for a Sunday stroll where they're picking flowers, but instead they were killing people. I remember the films of these guys were so just dispassionate, like just walking
Yeah.
through, killing a child there, gunning down a child, a mother and a child. And God almighty, what makes a man like that?
Yeah. Yeah.
These used to be ordinary people, but the brainwashing must be incredible.
Yeah. All right. And that's we got a few comments here to go. Okay, so we elected a council mayor for purposes for these purposes, and strong mayor's powers negates that council's job. Yeah. Could you imagine India and China at war? China would would China help Pakistan?
No, I think
China's in an alliance in a global alliance with India.
well, China actually has a bit of the border of Kashmir.
Yes, it does.
If you look, there's a little strip of
Yeah.
China right there.
Oh, on the northern edge of the Kashmir is the Chinese border. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah,
Right.
there's a small strip of it right on the Kashmir. So India could get involved in that, but I feel that as far as foreign entanglements, China is very much wiser than the United States was. The United States got into Vietnam and got into the war in there, and got in the prolonged war in Afghanistan, and those kind of things. You don't see China doing that, even though they're a major geopolitical force. They see it like, I mean, they do their own naughty stuff within their own borders, like what they did to the Uyghurs, but you really don't see them getting entangled in wars,
Foreign things. Yeah.
wars. Yeah.
You can understand that the Chinese will keep keep their border security and make sure that nobody crosses that border. In fact, one of the reasons why you end up with a lot of people like Bin Laden in Pakistan is because they can't get into China, those parts of China.
Well, Pakistan, of course, there are many vast areas of Pakistan, very hard to get to, and they have the tribal zones up in the northern part.
Yeah,
Those people aren't even Muslim; they are more ancient tribal religions in that.
absolutely.
Very interesting area. And they have sort of autonomous zones. In Pakistan, also in the southern part, what is it, the Bakal, or oh darn, it starts with a B. That area of Pakistan that's itching for independence all the
Yeah,
time. It's right on
yeah,
the southern part, and
yeah,
it has kind of a unique ethnic mix, and they want out of Pakistan. So them, I don't know, any kind of particular war could cause a lot of upset. It could cause uh, certain the Pakistanis to start cleave off into the bits that it's made up of. Anyway,
yeah,
that's a horrific story. That the Kashmir Islamic slaughter. Anyway, it's something that we have to keep an eye on. It's not in the news very much here because of all the other stuff going on, but the reason why Rubio jumped on it right away is because it is a potential real problem, and
yeah,
it could suck the world into a vortex there that we
yeah,
don't want. Particularly now, though, of course, with Rubio, and he's quite famous of saying that the only interested in anything that makes the United States stronger or makes the United States wealthier or makes the United States more secure. Those are the only three things that he has used for his.
Well, security is an important aspect here because everything India and Pakistan do impacts U.S. security, I think.
Yeah. So he quite blatantly said, you can find it on video, does it make the United States stronger? Does it make the United States more secure? Does it make the United States wealthier? Well, that's why he's jumping in there. They've got a deal coming up with India. They want a stable India because it looks as if they're going to try to shift their try to use India in place of China in many places in order to sort of make India more wealthy than they have already made China. It's definitely in their interest to keep India off the warpath, but we'll see. Modi's in a pretty rough position right now. His people will demand revenge. We'll see what happens.
Yeah. Okay. So moving on, we had a 69.7% voter turnout in Niagara at the federal elections, compared to 68.65 in the rest of Canada. So we're up on Canada. And there's a report saying that the perfect storm of throw the bums out versus save the country from Trump led to the highest vote turnout for Canadian federal election.
70%, 7/10 of us in Niagara went out to vote. That is very good. That is very good, particularly when you think there are people working late, there are people who have a hard time getting to the polls. You only have, and you have a lot of very old people that, we have a growing demographic that's older. So I think this is very good. 7 out of 10 potential voters got out and vote. I think that's a very plus sign. Very plus, particularly when you look at what was the provincial election was, very low turnout, comparatively speaking. Not that seriously.
No, and both of them were called at minimal with minimal time, but yet voter turnout in nationally was way higher than voter turnout in provincially.
Niagara West had had over 3/4, a little bit more than 3/4 of their electorate out. That's fabulous. 75.7%. That's excellent. That's an excellent turnout. I mean, if we get 75% every time, we'd be pretty happy. But having 7/10 of people come out, that makes me happy too, especially when So this was an important election here in Niagara. Obviously, people came out. I think more people voted in this election. I think you have to go back to the 90s, I think, before you found this many people coming out to
1988.
1988, yeah, back in Mulroney times.
Yeah.
That gives you a good, clear indication that how important this was in the mind of the average voter.
Yeah.
And that's good. Unfortunately, it took I want this, I would like to have this kind of vote count when you don't have the emergency of an existential threat from from a orangutan.
Yes, so you said Niagara West was 75.7. St. Catharines was 68.9, which is the national average. Niagara Falls was 66.7, which was below the national average, and 67.8 for Niagara South, which is above the national average. Right, so yeah, good.
So there we go.
I applaud Niagara voters. Well done.
Yeah, there we go.
Yeah,
so that's I don't know. It's good anytime, but my issue, of course, is we had an existential threat from the orangutan south of the border there, and That's what drove a lot of people to the polls.
Yeah. Okay. So, three 90s one-hit wonders bands are teaming up for a Fool's View concert. This is Lisa Loeb, the Rembrandts, and Crash Test Dummies are going to be performing together on November 22nd at the OLG stage at the Fool's View Casino, beginning at 7 p.m. And tickets are probably going to be about 180 to 200 US for this.
How much?
180 to 220 US.
Go get stuffed.
Yeah, I'm not paying. I've heard of all of these. In fact, I thought the Rembrandts were bigger than a one-hit wonder band, but that depends. Because I've heard certainly more than one thing from them. Crash Test Dummies were definitely one-hit wonder, but and I don't know
you have to take the canon of work of a lot of these bands. Let's say, like, I don't think Led Zeppelin had a number one hit at all. I'm not even sure it had a hit in the top 10. As a matter of fact, they didn't want to release them as singles. They were one of the most successful bands, most successful selling of vinyl bands, but they never had that pop hit. They didn't want it. They wanted you to buy the whole album and appreciate the musicianship. And I think that things like the Rembrandt and the Smiths or other kind of types of bands like that, they have a performance, and they are much more. They want you to be much more interested in their body of work, not what might take off and become a hit in the top 40. So to say that they're one-hit wonders, and that's why you should go see them. If you are familiar with these bands, their one hit or something may have drawn you into their music, and if you've liked their music thereafter, that's maybe where you're going. And I think that's probably where most people would go to hear the bands, because they like them more than the fact that they had one hit on the list.
Yeah, exactly. Because in fact, if you're going to this, it's because you like the Rembrandts or Lisa Loeb or whoever, whatever, right?
Yeah, so that's anybody that's interested in that and has got a whole lot of extra coin. Like,
it's November 22nd at the OLG stage at Fool's View Casino.
So it's and they're charging in US money too. That's just great.
Yeah, well, actually, the thing about that is maybe they're not necessarily charging in US money. This came from Syracuse.com. So it might well just be, it's because it's come from Syracuse. They're just, of course, putting the money in US dollars.
Well, and how are we supposed to afford that over here? If it's $182 US starting rate, that means it's like 182,000 Canadian dollars.
Yeah.
It's like you're asking for another half on top. So if it's $200 in US funds, you're going to have to be paying $300 Canadian.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah, I get you.
Ouch. Do you hear a one-hit wonder? No way, man. I want a multi-hit wonder for that kind of dough.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah, okay. But then again, I remember paying a scalper, the equivalent of a week's worth of money to go see David Bowie.
Huh. Well, yeah. I mean, you do that once in a while, though, too, don't you? You might do that. You might pay a lot of money to see a performing you really like and is really, really popular.
Well, my girlfriend at the time, she had a ticket, and I bought one off the scalper so I could go in there with her.
Yeah, and it cost you a week's salary. You know?
Yeah.
But I have a problem with the amount of money that you have to pay. Of course, this is marketing, and of course, it's just plain ordinary capitalism. If you have a huge demand, then you can demand a higher price for tickets. Uh, Now, if there was Taylor Swift came into town and only had one show, the tickets for her performances would be astronomical. But she
Yeah.
has 5 shows, 3, 4, 5 shows, that kind of thing. So she brings in a lot of people and does it that way. Um, but I mean, they are popular, and you want to go there, and so like you know, I don't know. It's up to you. I have I there are serious bands and sports teams and all that, which I
Well, it
would really
depends if you like them.
see, but
You
I'm
know,
not put out that kind of coin.
if you were a Rembrandt's fan, yeah, go, because you Rembrandts have done more than just one hit.
Yeah, if you pay that kind of money, you're more like a crash test dummy.
Yeah.
But
Okay.
do as you like, of course. And the average person, I mean, they know when they put out the ticket prices, they know how high to push it. They can get they can fill it up by costing it this amount of money. Now, when the new casino opened, they were charging a lot of money to see Paul Anka. Paul Anka was the act that opened up the casino, and they said it was all sold out and all that, but it wasn't sold out. It wasn't at all. The tickets were very expensive. So when I was there for the opening, going around with my now ex-wife, now she got tickets because she worked with the city and was able to get some tickets for the opening. So we went to the opening, and here and there, and they hadn't sold out the Avalon Theater at all. They had to go around and give out tickets to people to fill it up. And then later on, they said it was sold out. But meanwhile, I saw this guy. He had to fork over a lot of tickets here and there. He'd come up to you and say, "You want a couple of tickets to Paul Anka?" Sure, we take them. And then he goes somewhere else and somewhere else. So the fact is, the tickets cost too much for the average person. So then they had to start giving them away.
Yeah.
I think that when the marketers come in and they figure this is how much strain we can put on, we can fill the place up, and this is the maximum we can charge if we want to fill it up, and they'll push it right up to the very limit
Yeah.
because that's their job, right?
Oh yeah. Yeah. I know. All right. So Betty's basically saying it said that how they transferred their favorite drug of today, fentanyl and meth, seems in Walmart containers. Good morning, all. Okay.
What's that then? It's said that how they transfer their favorite drug of today, fentanyl and meth, seems that in Walmart containers. Oh, that's very possible. Now, the small under $800 packages was like until recently there was no tariffs on 800 anything $800 and below, and that's for like a lot of small businesses and things like that. We'll get small packages of merchandise and then spread it around. You could also do that yourself, buy that and become pretty much tariff free. But the problem is that fentanyl doesn't take a lot of ingredients to put it together. So you could pass by quickly, get past customs with $800 packages. Now it could also be shipped into things like Walmart containers and that. It'd be a little more difficult though, because you'd have to have somebody inside Walmart being able to pick out the boxes or whatever that fentanyl was part of. That's a real problem because, as we said before, the stuff that fentanyl is made out of is common things for to make other drugs and other materials. So these are common ingredients used in a lot of different things. So to say that China is dumping the ingredients for fentanyl into the United States is a little bit oversaid, because that stuff that's coming from China is used in a whole pile of different things, and it's identified in the shipping containers. But what happens is the fentanyl comes in these small packages. Up until now, the ones mostly the ones from under $800. So the fentanyl ingredients come into the United States largely by these small under $800 packages, and then the material is then smuggled into Mexico, where it is turned into fentanyl and then smuggled back into the United States.
Yeah.
So that's the procedure that happens mostly.
Yeah. All right. Yeah, but okay, let's get back onto track. So Ontario is investigating involuntary addiction treatment for people in jail, on parole, or in probation. Involuntary, as I understand it from people who work in the addiction area, and I've had a few friends over the years who have, involuntary does not work.
Yes, but you can see the tendency, and we've talked about this here, that the public is getting a harder and harder opinion of the growing number of addicts out there that are smashing windows, defecating on the streets, where it doesn't seem to be any solution to them at all. These are a growing number of people. And when we were treating them with a lot of compassion in that, now we find that they are a problem for us. And we found this out in Buchanan Street when they put up a place for the homeless there. And of course, on Summer Street, you find the cops there all the time. The neighbors being very upset about what's going on. We are now viewing these people not as victims of society, but wastrels and offscourings. And that is going to continue. And so the motivation to round these addicts up and put them into some sort of forced rehabilitation is going to gain currency, because that's the tendency right now. And you're very frustrated that this is a growing problem, not a reduced problem, and it doesn't seem that it's going to go away. So the very idea of forcing them into rehabilitation is like I said, it's going to gain currency, because there doesn't seem to be another solution.
Yeah, I get it for the people who are in prison because you have a captive audience.
Well, yeah, if you put them in jail, so they take them. Like if you find that you found a guy that's done minor criminal stuff, trying to steal something out of your car because he needs a fix or whatever else, and so you put him in jail. But what happens is just let him out of jail. But what they're going to say now is they're going to force him into rehabilitation. And do you do that? Do you take away someone's civil rights? Do you take away their civil rights to save their life? Or do you let them maintain their civil rights with the hope of they will get help somewhere else and change their life back to a normal life? It seems that the growing opinion is that they will not be able to do it on their own. They won't. So the idea of locking them up for their own good, we're in an unusual situation here. This isn't a political thing. It isn't geopolitical. And you're not locking up people with different opinions, different religions, or anything like that. We're based solely on the health of that particular person. That is your motivation, but you have to tread on their civil rights to do that.
Yeah,
this will keep coming up over and over.
Okay, Betty has basically said, I'm a victim because it took my ex away in 5 years. It's a killer drug. Fentanyl she's talking about.
Yeah, so once it gets your grips on you, you may not be able to get free without help. And how are you going to get help if your mind has changed and you don't want that help?
Yeah.
because drugs change your mind, it changes your attitude, it turns you into something you aren't, and because there's this craving and so on. So your ability to think clearly, to make judgments on your own, are compromised by the drugs you're taking. So the argument would be this person cannot make sound decisions because they are mentally impaired by and psychologically impaired by the need for this drug.
Yeah.
So for their own good, we'll lock them up and make them rehabilitate. I'm not sure that worked, but I think
all the experts out there have said that actually you need the person. It's like step one for the Alcoholics Anonymous is to recognize that you have a problem. That's step one.
They can't. This drug is too powerful.
Yeah.
To be able to overcome that.
Oh, I know.
If you're an alcohol and you go to work every day, yeah, you can admit your problem and then go off. But if you're down and out alcoholic in an alley somewhere, your ability to overcome it is less.
Yes, absolutely.
The power of this drug is something that makes that decision, you make that decision nearly impossible. What they're saying is you have to bring them into rehabilitation. They might not want to be there, but once they're in rehabilitation, after a certain amount of rehabilitation, they can now think clearly enough and then make the decision whether they want to stay or go. But you have to lock them up first. The problem is huge. I tell you, when Gary Wilkins was talking to me about Peterborough, it's even worse there. They have the zombie drug is kicking in there big time. You have many wasted lives. So what do you do about that?
Yeah.
Do you tread upon their civil rights to save them, or do you hope that other agencies or something can get to them and actually dissuade them from their lifestyle?
Yeah. All right. Yeah, Betty's saying it's awful. Yeah, absolutely. I know it's awful. Absolutely it is. All right.
You can imagine what you went through, Betty.
Yeah. Okay, so Stone Eagle Winery is paying for Niagara Stone Road to be widened in Niagara-on-the-Lake, or part paying at least.
How about that?
Yeah.
You can tell that they're very prosperous, or have a very optimistic view of of their business. If they're the ones that are paying for it to facilitate their winery, and others would just kind of petition the government and say, look, I got this business, I got to get it going, I'm an employer, I'm a big taxpayer, get your bum over here and fix this road, because it means money for the community, it means more business, etc. But I guess they're not patient enough to wait for that process, and they're just going to say, okay, hello city, I want the road widened, but I can't wait for you, so I'll do it myself.
Yeah.
Here's the money.
Yeah. And
that's extraordinary, don't you think?
It is. It is extraordinary because it is very extraordinary, because most people would just basically accept, hey, I want to get the I want you to do it. There'd be some pressurizing the city, get it done, knock on the door of the CIO, get it done, or the mayor,
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's what most people would do. But I'm trying to find where this road is. I'm not so okay. Stone Eagle Winery in Niagara-on-the-Lake.
It'll be on Niagara Stone Road, obviously.
Yeah, it's on Niagara Stone Road. Yeah, I'm just not familiar with where this particular winery is. Yeah, so
Well, it's like along Niagara Stone Road, so there'd be somewhere
Yeah.
along there. But there's wineries all over, the vineyards all over.
Wineries all over Niagara Stone Road, but it's good to see Niagara Stone Road at certain points has this need for improvements on it, and they're slowly getting there. Yeah, I just don't know what the road numbers. Okay, so it's in Virgil. I believe it's in Virgil where they're doing this. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. All right. Okay. Yeah. So I got to get going early. We have another topic, which I think is really quite a big topic.
What was that?
About the last phase of Zionism.
Yeah, I'm glad you put that up there. I'm very familiar with Elon Pepe. I've watched him on videos and kind of read stuff about him. He's an extraordinary person. He's one of the Israelis that is anti-Zionist and
Yeah.
have learned about Zionism. And we find that actually the settler movement and everything is just crushing the Palestinians. You see what they're doing in Gaza, and if we're going to leave right now, we'll talk about that on Monday.
Yeah,
But
I think so.
But if anyone's smart enough, look at Elon Pepe. Um, uh, the other names now are escaping for some reason. I can see their faces. But anyway, look at Elon Pepe. He'll tell you all about the colonialism of Zionism. And he himself, every time he comes, he's just a writer. And when he comes into the United States, they hold him for 5 hours and look him over as if he's some kind of terrorist or something.
Yeah.
The guy writes books. That's all he does. He doesn't he doesn't back up any kind of political force over there. But
he lives in Copenhagen, doesn't he? I believe in Denmark.
For a time, in this particular article, he was in Denmark, but I thought that he worked mostly out of London, but I'm not so sure now.
Yeah. Okay. Maybe. I don't know. And usually people like this tend to work in.
Gideon Levy is another one.
Gideon
Levy and Nico Marco. Oh shoot! I used to know these names at the top of my heart. Getting senile here.
Well, most of these places people work in places like London, like Copenhagen, which are relatively safe for intellectuals.
Well, yeah, they guy like Elon Pepe, like he knows Arabic because he made a point of learning it and hanging out with the Palestinians because he didn't think something was all wrong with this whole picture. Why are Ashkenazi Jews coming into Palestine and forcing Arabs off their land and saying it was theirs? And that was the Zionist mantra. So he said, there's something wrong with this. And he was right. There was. But the world refuses to listen, and the Palestinians will fight back. And then it gets desperate, like the October 7th attack, which makes matters even worse for the Palestinians.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Anyway, but we can talk about that later. But I do want to remind everybody about what's going on in Gaza. And I know that I speak about it every day, but Gaza is a genocide that's happening now. It is a marked attempt to remove those people from that land. They're going to make it impossible to live there. They just killed 22 more people yesterday. They'll kill anyone at any time. If they remotely suspect a Hamas operative in a tent, they'll kill everybody around him to get to it.
Yeah.
They might not even be sure who he really was. So, and right now they're putting at risk any of the hostages that are still alive. For a ceasefire, they could have had all the hostages back out again, but they won't want that. They don't care. Netanyahu does not care if those hostages live or die. Doesn't care. As long as they're there, he can keep pounding the crap out of the Palestinians. You know what I mean? There was like at the most 30 or 40,000 operatives of Hamas, and right now there are, they're getting close to 55,000 people killed, 120,000 injured. Everybody's house, hospitals, everything completely destroyed. Famine moving in. So right now, the Israeli state is acting like Nazis.
Yeah. All right. So we'll talk about that Monday.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah.
Without further ado, I bid you do not forget Gaza and pray for peace.